Hello, you're watching Studio Ken. Make sure you don't miss any episode of Studio Ken by subscribing to the YouTube channel. To subscribe, search for Studio Ken on YouTube, click subscribe on the bottom right of your screen, and set a reminder. You can also watch Studio Ken on Diamond TV on Wednesday at 18:30 and on Saturday at 19 hours. Studio Ken, the home of Kennedy Gondwe on YouTube.
From a common man on the street to President Hakainde Hichilema, the riveting tale of a Zambian soldier venturing into uncharted waters whilst on duty to adopt a baby has been viewed by many as an amazing act. This is because soldiers are known to be tough-tested, focused on their mission, and sometimes feared as heartless. But not with a humane and heartwarming gesture by Zambia Army's captain, Mwila Chansa. The story that she adopted a child whilst on duty in the Central African Republic first hit national headlines through Jack Zimba's compelling write-up in the Zambia Daily Mail. It then became a social media sensation where nearly everyone in the country was swept away with this act. We couldn't ignore Captain Chansa's display of love and selflessness, and it's because of that we decided to have her on Studio Ken.
Hi, my name is Leah Banda. I'm a certified coach and speaker. You're watching Studio Ken. Don't forget to subscribe.
Captain Chansa, welcome to Studio Ken.
Thank you, Ken, for having us.
What's the story behind the baby that you're holding?
Okay, so this is baby Tabo, born on the 5th of November 2020. The day Tabo was born is also the day she lost her biological mother and sister, who developed a complication during that pregnancy. So Tabo was left in the care of her aunt, who was the father's sister. The father lives in a different town called Boromata. So he was not able to care for a newly born baby and left her in the care of his sister. So in that care, obviously, she came from a community where they couldn't afford. Tabo was often fed on porridge, cassava porridge with salt. When we discovered her, the female engagement team led by Captain Namchimba at the time, the child was suffering from, and now Captain Zulu, the child was suffering from acute malnutrition. So that is how they nursed her and they took her to the camp hospital. Later on, her caregiver, health-wise, became Captain Chimwala, who ensured that she was able to recover from that acute malnutrition with the help and assistance of then the battalion commander, Colonel Paul Sapezo. So they agreed that she would be coming to our hospital, which was in Birao at battalion headquarters, to be fed and to be bathed and just generally cared for. So that is the brief background of the baby I'm holding in my hands today.
So how then did you find yourself adopting the baby?
I went into the mission area in March. At the time, that was a household name. When I arrived, everyone was telling me about this baby. Have you yet met Tabo? One of those was Captain Namchimba. She told me.
And all these are Zambians?
Yes.
The people that
yes, they were all working. They are all working for Zambia Army. And she told me about this baby and how that on one occasion, during one of the skills development training, there was a woman with this child on the back who was crying incessantly. And when they asked that she breastfeed her child, the woman just broke down. That is how they were told about the ordeal that this child was actually had a mother pass away during childbirth. So she told me this story and everyone knew about Tabo. So it was just the Sunday after I'd arrived. I arrived in the mission area on the 10th of March. And I remember that Sunday, the contingent medical officer, because she was being kept at the camp clinic, he was going to see her. So he said, Chansa, don't you want to tag along so you can finally see baby Tabo? So I remember I walked with him to the camp hospital and she was really small. I literally held her in one hand and it was time for her to feed. And I gave her a bottle and I was like, oh, okay, so this is finally baby Tabo. The next month, I think I remember she came to my room because now she started, we were keeping her. When she comes, we would keep her at our rooms. And I looked at her and I said, wouldn't it be lovely for this child to have a bright future, something more permanent, because we were doing enough for her. But I think that it wasn't enough for the kind of life that she needed. Giving her the food, giving her the care and the attention, it needed a more permanent solution. So I remember then I was like, God, if it's possible, at least help me find a way. I went to Google, tried to look up how to adopt a child from Central Africa. All the information was about USAID and how easy, of course, it is for Americans generally to adopt children because they have agencies. So that information is readily available. But there was nothing with regards Zambian adopting a child. But obviously with the basic legal knowledge I had and adoption, I said, okay. At the time, Colonel Sopezo was the one who had been given consent by the father to adopt the child. But he was 2 weeks into leaving the mission area, so it was pretty much impossible. The process was extremely lengthy. So the baton was passed on to me to try and see if we could work this adoption thing out.
What clicked in you the moment you saw her? I mean, you've come across so
Yes.
many babies.
Yes.
What clicked?
It's like, how when you meet the right guy and you fall in love.
What an example.
You just, as someone told me that,
Yeah.
it doesn't take the whole day to recognize sunrise.
Yeah.
And it's true. At 6 a.m., we all know, wow, that's the sun rising. It's the same thing with love.
Yeah.
And when I saw her that day in my room in April, my heart was drawn to her in a way that I can't explain in words, but I felt so much compassion for her. And I remember I was so touched. I said, if there's a way, help me find it. And all the time I would constantly think about what way would there be. But there was none. So I had to literally craft my own way. I put up a few documents. At the time, there was a letter of demand for adoption, the father's consent, and I also put my passport copy and a few other documents and went to Bangui. And I met this wonderful lady, Olivia, who helped me through the whole process because she was working for the court. And she told me all these other documents I needed. They needed a copy of my accounts to know that the child would not come here only to suffer. They needed a copy of my birth certificate to ascertain that I was at least 20 years older than this child. That is a prerequisite when you are adopting a child. So again, at the time I was due for CTO, so I came. CTO is just your compulsory time off. I came to Zambia for 14 days and compiled all the other necessary documents, flew back to Central Africa and filed what was missing so that now we could start the process. Then the application, I remember there was a shortfall of some, because there's a price difference for locals and foreigners. So I had to add extra money to pay for that process before I could even have a court hearing. That was October. I was only getting my first court hearing in December before a magistrate. I appeared. Obviously, the session was in French because Central Africa is a French-speaking language.
And Islamic, I was going to come to that.
Yes, and Islamic. And they were very tough questions. They wanted to understand the why. What was my interest? What was my intent? Were you able
to speak French or through an interpreter?
I had an interpreter.
Yeah,
so I had to speak in English. He interprets to the judge and vice versa. So after that court hearing, I remember the magistrate told me, okay, I hear all your reasons, but
what
I have
were the
to
reasons?
look. The reasons were that I was convinced that she had a better life coming here, and it was in her best interest for me to be allowed to adopt her, to become her legal mother, so that she could get a better life than one she was going to get if left in Birao. And obviously, they had to rule out the fact, was I a woman who had failed to give birth and wanting to come here so I could please my husband with a child?
And what did you tell them?
All those were questions. I said, no. At the moment, I'm still single and unmarried, and it's not my intention to have this child so that I could go and present her to my husband that, oh, look, honey, we have a child. So all those things were things that the judge had to consider in my submissions, and then she said, I'll look at the documents. If I am satisfied, I will then forward this file to the children's court. So it wasn't automatic.
Okay.
We waited 3 days, and she made a determination that the judgment would be proceed to the children's court. And that the date for my hearing only came in January. So again, I had to travel back to Bangui, same drill. Ask the wise, what are your intentions, what is your interest, so that the judge could eventually now satisfy himself that it had nothing to do with human trafficking. You know, when it comes to children under the age of 5, and children generally, the world over, international law is extremely strict on children, because it is for the court to ensure that children are kept safe. So after that hurdle of finally being granted the judgment, now there were administrative hurdles, because properly I should have asked for consent from the United Nations and from back home for me to go through this process. But I knew that there would have been a possibility of me getting a negative response. So better say sorry than, you know, ask for permission. So first and foremost, the most important person I needed to inform was my boss, the army commander, to tell him what had happened, and also request if she could come with me on the flight, because the government procures that flight and not anyone can get on it. So he had to give me that permission, and also with his help, we needed to communicate to United Nations in New York. It took a week and time was already going. We were in mid-February, and I should have been back home on the 10th of March. And eventually, we got a positive response. It was such a breather, because I'd never expected it. I was just wondering, what is he going to say? Is he going to say no? Will he understand? But the army commander was so touched by the story that he granted me all the requests that I made in the letter I had written to him, that I fly with her, because worst case scenario, I should have bought a ticket for myself and her and buy our way here. But he allowed us to come on that aircraft at no cost.
At no cost?
At no cost.
Tabo is a Zambian name.
Yes.
The baby wasn't born Tabo.
No, she was born Usna Nasodin.
Come again?
Usna Nasodin.
Okay.
Usna means God bless in Arabic, and Nasodin is her father's name, which I believe that we shall maintain for her identity.
Okay.
So Tabo was given to her by Captain Tiko Nkua. She was our movement transport officer at the time. The circumstances in which Tabo was born reminded her of her cousin who had similar circumstances and was named Tabongile. So when now we're looking for a name, Captain Nkua said, you know what, this child, same circumstances for her cousin, her mother. Captain Nkua's mother adopted the cousin. So now she's actually a nurse. She should be visiting us anytime soon. She would like to meet the younger Tabo.
And Tabo means joy.
Tabo means joy.
Okay. I realize that in your explanation, you're not mentioning the role that your family played. And will I be right to assume that you've got a man in your life? You must have been consulted, unless I'm wrong.
Well, firstly, I'll address my family first.
Yeah.
The first time I think I posted a picture of Tabo in our family group, the first person who reacted was my father. Currently, His Royal Highness Chief Kaputa. And he was like, you know what? I think that you should come with Tabo. She's so adorable. I don't know if he was joking at the time, but I was like, he actually, you know, it was like he was on the same wavelength as I was. That is not to say that there were not other parts of my family who were concerned, and rightly so, because in Africa, the idea of adoption for us means a close relative loses a parent and you step in as an aunt, as an uncle, and you take them in as your own child. So the thought of traveling miles away and getting a child of another nationality and bringing them here was a bit dreadful and scary. And I understand where they were coming from, because they only had their best interests in mind. Of course, they expressed the dangers, you know. Adopting a child is not like buying a pair of shoes to say, okay, when this shoe is done, I'm going to throw it away. Adopting a child is a lifelong commitment, and it's a sacrifice that one should be ready to take, because they are your child. You have to think about paying for their way through school from grade 1 all the way up to grade 12, and then you have to think about university. And that is all at a cost. There are nights that they'll be sick and you have to take them to the hospital. So I think that they wanted to make sure that I made this decision with so much clarity, not just blinded by how nice the adoption process was. Yes. With regards, if I'm seeing someone, the answer is in the affirmative.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
As a couple, you have to discuss a lot of things: how you will spend your money, where your children will go to school. And before I went to CAR, we never ever thought about this, to say, no, when you come back, you adopt a child. It all happened while I was there. And in the initial stages, of course, it's not an idea that everyone jumps at excitedly. But after discussing the whys and him understanding my intentions, he now agreed that it was okay for this child to come. After all, if he does decide to marry me, this will be our firstborn child.
Your firstborn child,
Yes.
not your biological one. Sorry, I'm not drawing lines, but just for purposes
No,
of
but
clarity.
Either way, it
Yeah.
will still be our child.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
Yes.
Okay. How about generally Zambians, workmates? There's so many orphans
Siri.
around, so many orphanages. Didn't they ask you why you didn't go to any of the local orphanages as opposed to adopting someone from the Central African Republic?
Yes, sweetie. Yes, I had a lot of questions as to why Tabo, And I remember in the process, sweetie, when we were waiting for the army commander's response, someone had asked me, what are you going to do if he, yes, sweetie, if he says no, you might as well maybe go and adopt from home. And I said, you know, adopting a child is like falling in love. You see so many wonderful men, so many wonderful women, but your heart will only choose one. And that is the one person that you decide to spend the rest of your life with. So for me, I had seen and interacted with a lot of vulnerable children before. Yes. And none of them struck me the way Tabo did.
So what if he said no? What were you going to do?
I would like to think that there's many fish in the sea.
So what if he came to you now
It was
and
Tabo.
said,
It was Tabo or nothing.
Really?
Yes.
And if he came to you now and said, look, I'm calling off my plans, if at all he's already expressed
I think
those
it
plans.
is okay. It's okay.
So you'd rather have Tabo?
I would rather have Tabo.
Wow. So what plans have you made for her?
Generally, I think that I would love her to learn French, which is the language that they use back home in Central Africa. And of course, offer her the best education, not just within the classroom, but also in terms of life. You know, charity begins at home. So there are a lot of things that I have learned from my parents that I would love to pass on to her as she grows up. How to respect people, how to conduct yourself, you know, and how to live generally in society, other than giving her the best education. I got a very good education myself, so I would like to replicate the same for her.
Okay. Do you ever imagine a life without her?
At this point, no. Well, the point that judgment came, naming me as her mother, no. There's no day that goes by without me thinking of myself as a mother, and her being my daughter and growing up. There are days when she comes, you know, she'll just randomly run to me and give me a hug, and I'll be saying, you know, soon you'll be 18 and this won't be the order of the day. So I relish those moments with her.
But do you ever have plans when she grows up of taking her back to where she came from?
That will be entirely up to her. I think when she reaches the age of majority, probably at 21, it will be up to her to decide where her life should be, whether it will be here or whether it will be in Central African Republic, all I can guarantee is she'll have my 100 support.
Okay. Do you ever think about days when she probably gets sick? Of course, I'm wishing her good health from the bottom of my heart. Or the day,
Yes, sweetie.
if the unfortunate thing were to happen, she passes on here.
Yeah.
What would happen?
I haven't thought about that much, but the few moments I've thought about it, it's a very dreadful picture for myself, basically because I'll have a lot of people to answer to. Generally, I think we have seen the reception with which the Zambian people have embraced her story. Tabo is like a national asset now. So I'll have the Zambian people to be accountable, especially if the death were a result of my own negligence. It's different if it's as a result of nature. But even then, there's the Zambia Army, the UN, and of course her family in Birao who we're still connected to.
And the president?
Yes, and the president.
Does that add extra motivation or pressure?
It's a lot of pressure. It's like, you know, it's like a lynch on your head.
Yeah.
You're constantly moving with a lynch on your head.
And how did you feel when he made a comment about Tabo?
You know, I woke up, my phone was buzzing. It was buzzing. People were sending me all sorts of screenshots. So I was like, okay, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I remember I was on a call that morning, on a WhatsApp call. So I didn't, you know, pay attention. So I said, okay, one of my friends, Musoli, I said, let me open her. She was like, girl, you've made it in life. I'm like, let me open her message. And to find the president, you know, I screamed. I was like, oh my God, you have no idea.
Yeah.
He's like, what's going on? I was like, the president commented on the article. So obviously everyone from work was like, have you replied to the president? You know, he's your commander-in-chief. You have to reply. So eventually that is how I thanked him profusely for the comment.
Okay.
I was so honored. It was very humbling. I did not expect it. And even during the adoption process, I think that the article and the attention that we've gotten was not part of the plan. All of it is just a completely beautiful surprise. Sweetie.
Okay. So give me an idea. What is a day like for you when Tabo, when you're not at work, you're just with Tabo?
Yes.
Yeah.
So eventually, so it's a night full of karate kicks.
Hello.
So, and she loves her water. So even when she's sleeping, yes, baby, she likes to drink water.
Okay.
So we sleep with her feeding bottle with some water. Usually she wakes up at 7 or latest 7:30, and then we eat porridge.
Yeah.
Whilst watching cartoons.
Which
most
one
of
is
the
her favorite
parts.
cartoon?
She
I
likes
can see she's
Coco
got a remote.
Melon. Coco Melon is her favorite, and Baby Shark.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
she
When we were
likes
coming in, I heard
Baby
that.
Shark.
Yeah.
And so she likes Baby Shark, and the wheels on the bus go round and
Oh,
round.
I see.
That's her favorite.
Okay.
So after that, she takes a bath. She's usually asleep by 10 to 12. Then she wakes up. We have lunch. Her grandparents usually are requesting for her, so we schedule them in the afternoon. So
Which grandparents? You mean
my father
Okay.
and my mom.
Okay.
So she visits them, or she visits my aunt, or her nephews, or her cousins. My nephews and nieces come over to play with her. I have nieces and nephews who are Don Gordon, which is just a stone throw away. So they visit often, and her cousin Lucy is very fond of her. So they come here, and then she also sleeps between 3 p.m. and 5 p.m. That's her nap time. And then we have supper, we play, we watch Coco Melon on the phone, which she calls Papa.
Yeah.
So at 20:30, she's usually asleep, 20:30 and 21.
Are you in touch with your family?
Yes, so
In
in the Central African, in Birao, yes. Last week we just sent them some photos. I sent them some photos of how she's doing, photos obviously with my family, so that they also see the family in which she has come. And the aunt was very grateful that her heart is at peace with Tabo being here with me. So every week she goes to the camp, and they call us for a video call. Sometimes it just lasts 20 minutes. 5 minutes, but nonetheless, we are in constant communication with them.
And do you have any plans of visiting them as she's still in your custody?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
We have plans of visiting them or vice versa, them visiting us.
Okay.
We are hoping that we could probably arrange for a passport for her aunt who can visit us.
Every parent has got a wish, or they wish something for their children. What is your wish for this child here?
I would wish for her to be the president of Central African Republic.
For real?
Yes.
Why?
I say that without flinching. It's just a very deep conviction that,
Okay.
you know, we wouldn't have taken such a trouble to bring her here, fight tooth and nail, you know, engage the powers that be until she was here. It just reminds me so much of the story of Moses, that how is it possible that a basket could not, you know, drown in the Red Sea and found itself at that time in the hands of a princess who now took him in as her son and trained her only to come and be the one to rescue the children of Israel. I think of her like that.
Okay.
Maybe she may not be a president, but whatever role she'll play, I think is very cardinal for
A lawyer,
her people.
a soldier like yourself?
It would be nice for her to be a lawyer. It would be so nice.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be one of those parents who live their lives through their children. I would want, if she wants to be a doctor, whatever she wants to be, and if she has the conviction that that is what she wants to be, I will support her 100%.
And what religion would you want her to be?
Christian.
Why Christianity? I mean, she comes from the
I
car where
know,
majority of the people are
In
Muslim.
fact, she comes from an Islamic household.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, she's attending Sunday school already, so I guess that is why.
Okay. On that religious note, it's been a pleasure chatting with you on Studio Ken.
Pleasure's mine, Ken.
All right.
Hi, my name is Leah Banda. I'm a certified coach and speaker. You're watching Studio Ken. Don't forget to subscribe.